So kicking it off into the agenda for today, we're first going to cover some 401k industry statistics. Then we're going to talk about what your options are. We'll talk about what a rollover is and what are the benefits. We'll talk about how do you request a rollover, and then how can Emerge 360 help. So some 401k industry statistics. I added a quick question in here. I know nobody can respond or anything like that, but just try to think in your head. As of July 2025, approximately how many 401k accounts are estimated to be forgotten? So the answer was C, 31.9 million left behind or forgotten 401ks. And you might be asking, how does this number get so large? When you are earlier in your career, you might jump from job to job to job and think that this small 401k balance that you had with a former employer, it's not that important to get it consolidated or get everything put together because you have a large period of time before you end up retiring. But that's how all of these 401ks get forgotten. People move from job to job and they don't think it's that big of a deal until they decide to retire and end up having numerous different 401ks that they have to try to figure out where they're at and consolidate things, and it can create kind of a hassle. So lots of different 401ks that are forgotten. There's also an opportunity cost to this too, because some of these 401k balances, if your balance is under $7,000, these 401k accounts are usually transferred into what's called a restricted IRA. So these IRAs are invested only in money markets, so there's lost growth opportunities, right? They're not invested in the stock markets and continuing to grow as they would if you rolled it into your current employer's plan or into an IRA elsewhere. These restricted IRAs also typically don't allow you to list specific beneficiaries. And one of the things that we really like people to do is have those beneficiaries up to date. So if you were to pass away, then whoever you want to receive your assets does receive those assets. So what are your options with 401k rollovers and IRA rollovers? So 401ks are a little bit more restrictive on when you can actually take funds from them or roll over funds from them. So there's what's called these distributable events. So you can take funds from your 401k if you are retired, if you are still working at age 59 and a half, if you have left employment, and then disability and death. So if I was working and I had a 401k account with my current employer and I'm only, let's say, 30 years old, I wouldn't be able to roll that 401k balance anywhere else because there's specific requirements that need to be met before you can take those funds out of the account. And then IRAs. IRAs are individual retirement accounts, so they're separate from your employer, and you can take distributions from these accounts anytime or roll over funds from these accounts at any time. So what are the different things that you can do with a 401k if you are able to roll over or take a distribution from that account? One of the options is to cash it out. This option is almost never recommended because if you, we'll actually get into that in the next slide. Another option is to leave it with your old 401k. That is sometimes recommended, but again, we'll get into that a little bit later. And then roll over your 401k. This is typically the most recommended option, and we'll get into that in the next couple slides here. So the first option was to cash out your 401k assets. Why would someone want to do that? And the reason being, there's immediate access to that cash. So let's say you're younger in your career and you left employment with a company, you have a smaller 401k account balance, and you want to take that cash out. So that might be one of the reasons or one of the advantages to taking that 401k out. But there's a lot of different disadvantages that you want to keep in mind and make sure you're thinking through the decision before you cash out that 401k. So some of the disadvantages are penalties and fees. So if you are under the age of 59 and a half and you cash out your 401k, not only are you going to pay taxes on that entire account balance, but you're also going to pay penalties on top of that. So the taxes that you're going to pay are going to be pretty hefty. Any distributions that you take are also going to be included in your taxable income. So by withdrawing the assets from your 401k, it might push you into a higher tax bracket, again, making you pay more in taxes. You're also forfeiting any tax deferred growth by having those assets within that retirement structured vehicle. And then the funds might not be available for retirement. If you decide to cash out your entire 401k and want to use those funds, those accounts won't be available when you do want to retire in the future. So option 2, you can leave the former 401k in your former 401k employer's plan. What are the advantages and the disadvantages of this? So some of the advantages are that you might have familiar investment choices. Maybe you really like that your former employer's 401k has target date funds and you really liked those. You also are still keeping those funds within that tax deferred or retirement account structure. So you're still going to have that tax deferred growth of the account. What are some of the disadvantages though? There might be a minimum balance that's required for you to be able to keep that 401k in that former employer's plan. We talked about those restricted IRAs a little bit earlier in the presentation, and if your account balance is not over their minimum, you might be kicked over to that restricted IRA. You also might have limited withdrawal options. 401ks can sometimes charge fees to take withdrawals, or they might only require you to take a check instead of having it sent to your bank account. So there's different and limited withdrawal options with that. And then you can't continue to make contributions if you have left employment with that former 401k. And then some former 401ks or 401k administrators might not allow for Roth conversions if that's of interest to you. And then that last one is a really big one. You might lose track of who the 401k provider is. This can happen when you leave your 401k with a former employer, and let's say the company gets bought out and the 401k provider changes to a different person. You might not have known that happened. They're required to send you documentation, but maybe it got lost in your inbox or something like that. And you might lose track of where that 401k is, and it becomes a big hassle to try to track that 401k down. So this one is sometimes recommended, but just can depend on the different circumstances. And then the last option is roll over your 401k or your former 401k. So what is a rollover and what are the benefits of that? So a rollover is when you withdraw funds from one eligible retirement plan and contribute all or part of it to another eligible retirement plan. So there's different types of account structures that might be eligible for a rollover. If you have questions on the specific types of account that you have or that you'd like to roll the funds into, feel free to schedule a meeting with us after this, and we're happy to walk through kind of what those different eligibilities are. So what are all of the benefits of rolling your former 401k into a new 401k or an IRA? it just makes things a lot more simple. So you will only have one account then to maintain. That's one account investment objective that you have to maintain, one account that you have to update beneficiaries on. And then if you're over a specific age, required minimum distributions will start from any pre-tax funds that you have. And if you have one 401k or one IRA, that's one required minimum distribution that you would need to take. You also would avoid any unexpected provider changes. Again, if the 401k provider transfers to somebody else, or if the company gets bought out, you might lose track of where that 401k is if you don't decide to consolidate with your new 401k or put your account into an IRA. And then there's potential for cost savings too. Certain administrative expenses can come up within 401ks, or different types of advisors might charge different types of fees. So one thing that we always recommend people do is just be very open with asking about how whoever you're working with is being charged for their services and things like that. So those are just a few benefits of rolling over to your new 401k or IRA. And then what are the benefits of rolling over your previous 401k to an IRA? Typically, when you work with an IRA, you have an advisor as well. And these advisors can provide you with additional services such as financial planning, investment management. You'll get a direct team of people that's able to provide you with different types of advice, and take a look at your entire financial picture so that they can help you make the best and most informed decisions. Rolling over your former accounts to an IRA also allows potential for future contributions to the account. Again, if you leave an employer, you're no longer able to contribute to that 401k. So this opens opportunities for you to do that. And then there's also an option to convert traditional or pre-tax dollars into Roth dollars, which kind of goes into that financial planning piece, trying to determine what the right decisions are for your financial situation. And then just overall better communication. 401ks are administered by a team of people, but sometimes there's a lot of different participants within there. So when you work with an individual advisor, typically you get a team of people with better communication, more services, and things like that. So how do I request a rollover? We'll start with a 401k to an IRA. So the first step that you want to do is to figure out where your old 401k is if you lost track of it. There's not really a good software to do this, so it's really just contacting your former 401k employer or provider. Next, you need to open a new IRA account if you don't already have that opened. IRAs, if the pre-tax and the Roth portions would be separate accounts, which is different from a 401k. You'd want to determine how the check should be made payable to, so check with your new IRA administrator on that. You'll want to request a total rollover, so you can do this by logging into your online portal or calling your former 401k employer or provider, but every 401k company kind of does that a little bit differently. And then the checks will be processed, printed, and mailed. So if the checks are mailed to your address, it's typically best standard to get those checks deposited within the next 60 days. And then those checks will eventually be deposited into your new IRA account. So now let's go through the process for an IRA to an IRA. The first thing you're going to want to do is to confirm if your IRA is eligible for a rollover. There's different types of circumstances. And again, happy to chat with you on your personal situation a little bit later, but just make sure that your IRA is eligible for a rollover. If you don't have new IRA accounts opened with your new IRA administrator, just make sure you get those opened before you submit any transfer paperwork. And then you're going to want to work with your new IRA administrator to complete asset transfer paperwork. A lot of IRA companies will be able to talk directly to the asset transfer teams on both sides of the IRA. So IRAs might be a little bit simpler and quicker on getting things transferred. And then assets will be transferred from your former IRA accounts into your new IRA accounts. So there's a couple different ways that this can happen. But again, if that check is mailed to your address, best practice is to get the checks deposited within the next 60 days. And then the assets will be deposited into your new IRA accounts. So the last scenario we'll go over today is from an IRA to a 401k. So first you want to confirm that your IRA is eligible to roll over to your current 401k. Unfortunately, there's a really weird rule where Roth IRAs specifically cannot be rolled back into a 401k. So super important to keep in mind there. And then just also confirm that your 401k administrator will accept the rollover too. Different plans are structured in different ways. Next, you'll want to determine how the check should be made payable to. So you'll want to contact your current employer or 401k provider. You'll request that total rollover. And then the IRA assets will be transferred to your current 401k provider. And again, if that check is mailed to your address, best practice is to get it deposited within 60 days. And don't make these mistakes. So there's a lot of different scenarios on this page. I won't go through all of them, but I'll touch on a couple of them. So the top one, forgetting about your 401k with a former employer. Again, a lot of the time these accounts can get lost. They can get transferred to different providers. And then you end up getting closer and closer to retirement and you have 5 different 401ks that you want to consolidate. Another common mistake is thinking that your 401k or IRA administrator can do it all without your assistance. Again, sometimes we'll have people come to us with 5 different former 401ks or IRAs, and it takes a lot longer and requires a lot more action from you to then get everything consolidated. So keeping that in mind. And then not working with a trusted financial professional when things get more complex. When you're earlier in your working career and you have one 401k account and you're just focused on saving, maybe you don't think that you need financial assistance at that point. But as you get closer and closer to retirement, again, especially if you have multiple different 401k accounts or IRA accounts, things can start to get more complex. Not only just with rollovers, though, in retirement in general, right? You've been saving your entire life and now you have to try to take funds from your accounts, and it can be stressful. So be sure to talk with a trusted financial professional when you do get to that point. And Emerge 360 is a financial professional. So how can we help you? So in terms of rollovers and things like that, we are happy to sit down and have a conversation with you, take a look at what your accounts look like. But if you're looking to get additional assistance like financial planning, investment advice, different things like that, and you have any 401k accounts with former employers or IRAs, or even brokerage accounts. A lot of the times those can get rolled over to Emerge 360, and we have a relationship minimum of 50,000, but that's between you and your spouse. So if you think you want some more specific advice and financial planning, this might be a good benefit for you, and happy to have a conversation on that. And one of the big services that we provide is financial planning. So what is financial planning? Financial planning really takes a look at all of your financial goals. It takes a look at your assets, your liabilities, your expenses, and puts it all into this big picture where we can give you different advice based on where you're at in life and what your goals are. So a lot of people, financial planning just provides clarity and direction, right? You have a goal of retirement, but let's say you also have a goal of trying to fund your child's education costs, and those are your 2 main goals. Well, we're able to help you find direction on where it might be best to save for those goals. A lot of the times too, it just gives people peace of mind, right? I mentioned earlier, you save your entire life and now you're supposed to spend your money. And this financial planning really helps people to kind of understand and see uh, that it is okay that they can spend that money. They've done a really great job of saving throughout their career. So financial planning can help a large variety of people, but it is a super great thing that everyone should go through. And then we do have another resource here, so I'll stick on this page for a little bit, but if you are getting closer and closer to retirement and some Social Security questions are coming up, feel free to scan that QR code and we'll get you a copy of our guide to Social Security. Social Security is very complex and can be very confusing, so happy to help there, and then happy to also meet further with people if you've got other questions on that. And then I mentioned it at the beginning of the presentation, but we do have a couple more events and webinars coming up. So be sure to be on the lookout for those. And then I just wanted to say thank you for joining us today for the Rollover webinar. The next event again is going to be that retirement readiness session that we have in person in La Crosse. And then the one after that, I believe, is the top financial questions.